Welcome back to Survivor Sax, everybody, and we are focusing on saxophone sound development. So by far, the most important thing you can do is listen. Who do you listen to? Well, if you're a saxophone player, you want to develop your sound on saxophone, obviously you listen to saxophone players. But who do you listen to? That's the question today. So in this video, I'm going to go over who I think are the 7 most important saxophone players you should listen to in order to develop your sound, regardless of whatever kind of music you are playing. This is very important because by listening to one person, that will branch off into listening to people that have a similar sound to that person. So this is not meant to be like number 6 is more important than number 7 or number 5 is more important than number 6. It is not that. All the people that I'm going to put on this list are equally important, except when I get to number 1. And I can guarantee you that the person that's number 1 on this list is the most important and also the one that you listen to the least. Who is this saxophonist? Let's find out. Let's do it. Coming in at number 7, ladies and gentlemen, is Sigurd Roscher. Very popular classical saxophone player, helped to pioneer the saxophone as being a legitimate instrument. There's a handful of classical saxophonists who helped to really establish the saxophone as a very legitimate instrument. Sigurd Roscher is the Top Tones for Saxophone book guy, a book that is notoriously difficult, even in its 3rd iteration that was made easy. So imagine what the 1st and 2nd iteration are all about. He even talks about this in his book, talking about the difficulty of what it is he was trying to get his students to do. So he decided to make a 2nd edition, and then we're all familiar with the 3rd edition. I love to get my hands on the 1st and 2nd edition just to see, like, what difficult really is. The whole idea of developing your sound on saxophone isn't about you listening to all the saxophonists you like. It's about listening to saxophonists that you've never heard before. And if you have someone as legendary as a Sigurd Roscher, maybe classical saxophone isn't your thing. Maybe you hate that sound, but you have a much better understanding of what a saxophone can sound like. So there's this old riddle that I like to say to people. How do you find your sound? And you ask somebody this question and they go on about practicing and all this other stuff. But then you say, okay, well, let me put it a little bit different. How do you find something that you've never seen before? How would you recognize it if you saw it? Well, obviously you wouldn't. You've never seen it before. And as far as your sound goes, you've never heard it before. And even if you did hear it, you do something really cool, you don't recognize how cool it is because you don't have this library of knowledge to make a point of reference. So, number 7, Sigurd Roscher. Coming in at number 6, ladies and gentlemen, Charlie Parker. Whether you are a bebop guy, a smooth jazz, classical saxophone, it doesn't matter. Charlie Parker's sound is very unique and nobody else really sounds quite like Charlie Parker. A lot of what makes Charlie Parker very easily identifiable is his harmonic knowledge. I talk about this in my Saxophone Sound Development book. In my Saxophone Sound Development book, I talk about the 5 core things that helps you to develop your sound, 5 most important things. There's 2 extras, 6 and 7, which is essentially special effects that certain people are known for using, and also harmonic knowledge. Charlie Parker is absolutely positively known for his extensive harmonic knowledge of the jazz language, which helps to identify his sound, along with the elements that actually make up his tone. So Charlie Parker, most definitely on this list. Coming in at 5, everybody, we have Ben Webster. I am always talking about the importance of subtone in your sound. Whether you are a jazz or a classical musician, there is some degree of subtone in your sound. So what is subtone? Essentially, subtone is air that's traveling through the saxophone that is not being used to convert the reed's motion into a pitch. There is just a hiss, this white noise that creates a type of sonic pad that is apparent in everyone's sound. The difference is to what degree that sound is there. With someone like Ben Webster, it's a very high degree. So I would classify people like Coleman Hawkins, Stan Getz to have that high subtone. We should focus much more exclusively on that tone, that subtone that Ben Webster gets, that you can use essentially to some degree into your playing. So coming in at number 5, Ben Webster. Coming in at number 4 is Pharoah Sanders. I thought about whether to put Ornette Coleman or Eric Dolphy in place of Pharoah Sanders, but I think that Pharoah Sanders captures really this hybrid between free jazz and still pretty much staying inside, and his tone is representative of something that works very well with that. I've always felt like Wayne Shorter threaded that line with his tone, but I think with someone like Pharoah Sanders, they're that jump off point. Like once you get to Pharoah Sanders, then you can branch out into the Wayne Shorters and Ornette Colemans and all those kind of guys that started really experimenting with free jazz until you ultimately get to John Coltrane with late Coltrane, and that stuff is really out there. But as you can tell from Sigurd Roscher, Ben Webster, Charlie Parker, Pharoah Sanders, these guys sound nothing like each other. And realistically, it's probably going to take you years to actually like all of what these guys are doing. I don't really actively listen to all of them with the same emotional intensity, but I definitely have an appreciation for what it is they've done, and I've put the time into listening to them to try to learn from their sound. Coming in at number 3, ladies and gentlemen, he is widely considered to essentially be the father of smooth jazz. So this is Grover Washington Jr. And he is such a departure from the bebop, the hard bop, and this kind of stuff, especially when you listen to something like Just the Two of Us, how integrated he was into the pop scene and how his sound and tone blends well with that, along with his harmonic approach. I mean, is he going to play bebop lines and this kind of thing, or is he going to do something that's much more diatonic that people can expand off of? And I think that if we're going to get into listening to smooth jazz, he's the guy that you start with. I believe that from Grover Washington Jr., he's kind of your launch point into all the smooth jazz that came after that. How people were like listening to these pop songs and essentially doing with them the same thing that these jazz guys were doing with the American songbook type of songs, but a different kind of format, a different approach to saxophone sound to initially make it sound like it's different from the stuff that came before. Coming in at number 2, ladies and gentlemen, Kenny G. There is a fantastic, and I mean, this is one of the best documentaries of a musician I've ever seen that's on HBO Max, and it's Kenny G. And there's so many of these musicians, especially when it comes to saxophones and jazz, that ultimately wind up having the story revolve around their junk dependability. I'm going to phrase it like that so YouTube's gremlins doesn't snag my video, but this documentary is nothing like that. And what I really appreciate about it is that it doesn't run away from the controversy surrounding Kenny G. Some of you may not know that there even is a controversy that surrounds him and what's it all about and all of that kind of stuff. I think the HBO did a fantastic job at actually putting this together, and it really gives you a much better insight of what Kenny G is about instead of what a lot of people thought the music was about. There's one legitimate concern that I always had about Kenny G's music is that it was labeled jazz. It was kind of later that the smooth jazz name really kind of like differentiated it from what I was studying in college as jazz. I mean, even before college, I went to jazz camps and a whole bit, having a very well-defined definition of what this music is, only for something different to be marketed under that same category, and legit, people freaked out. But I can tell you right now, no one sounds like Kenny G. And this is all about developing your sound and listening to find out what a saxophone is actually capable of sounding like. And he sounds exactly like Kenny G on soprano, alto, and tenor. It is quite a phenomenal feat of sound development. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, who is the number one saxophone player of all time that you should make an active effort to be listening to? And I can promise you it's someone that you don't listen to enough. But let's get to that after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, I do have merchandise. You can pick this up on Amazon. This one isn't mine personally, but I'll put a link in the description under the Amazon section for this. I love this thing. It's just a really nice saxophone mug here. I want to show you guys this thing also. I picked up this light here, oscillating saxophone light. This thing is very cool. The number one saxophonist that you should be listening to is yourself. Oh my goodness. People are terrified to listen to themselves. A lot of people don't even want to listen to their own speaking voice because it sounds so weird to them. And when you listen back to what it is that you've played, oh, I've seen people go through some serious emotional problems listening back to themselves. But you got to get over that. You can immediately fix a lot of your problems simply by listening to yourself. You go, am I doing that every time? And then you grab your horn and you go play and you go, man, I've been doing that for years. I'm going to tell you this story. This is one of the best lessons I ever had in my life. I remember it like I just took this lesson yesterday, but I'm in college and I'm learning classical saxophone. And there's one bar of this Bach and I'm swinging it. And I can't hear myself swinging it, but my teacher is looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, why are you swinging this bar? And I'm just like, am I swinging it? I'm not trying to be rude and say that I'm not doing it. I just can't hear myself doing it. So, okay, for those of you who don't know, this is the universal sign for record. This is the play and the record button. Back in the day, you had the mechanical recorder and you go, and it would, at any rate, he hit the recorder. I played through it. I didn't hear myself do it. And then he played it back. And when he played it back, I looked him in the face like, and he looked at me like, and I heard it. I heard it loud and clear. So I was like, okay, let's play it through again. So I went to go play it. And right before I got to that section, I immediately stopped. Because at that point, I heard myself about to do it. And I just froze. I was like, and he knew why I stopped. It's like I was about to do it. I heard it in my head swinging and I was about to play it that way. All because I took 2 seconds to play it back and hear myself. Fix that problem immediately. Start by listening to yourself in private. Okay? So I hope that I can provide you with some key insight. So of course, ladies and gentlemen, I do have my Saxophone Sound Development book that is now available. I have my All Things Diminished book here, and on the bottom here I even added some Altissimo fingerings for the diminished scales. I have my Altissimo book for alto saxophone, and of course I have my Altissimo book for tenor saxophone. These are all available on PayHip as a digital purchase only. If you like this kind of content, ladies and gentlemen, and you want to help support the channel, you can buy me a piece of cake. It's like a Kickstarter, Patreon type of thing. Any little bit really does help a lot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so that's all I got for you. Stay tuned. I got some more saxophone sound development stuff that's coming up. So that's all I got for you. See ya!